Compassion and tolerance are not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. That's a quote from the Dalai Lama. Not to sound like negative Nancy, but the world we are in is in so much pain. Atrocities after atrocities keep on happening around the world without even including the state of the global economy, the state of our planet, the state of our mental health with the rise of depression, anxiety, burnout, ADHD, bipolar, borderline, and narcissism cases discovered among adults like never before. We live in a high pressure society very much centered around individualism, where self-criticism, being hard on ourselves, and beating ourselves up when we don't succeed at something are the norm, and depression and self-hatred are common. We tend to project that not only onto ourselves, but onto others too, being completely desensitized from their pain, losing our power of active listening, taking things personally, making assumptions, and not feeling touched whatsoever if it's far away from us. We are when it's our loved ones or people around our home, but not so much so when it's far and different. We totally forget to think collectively. And that's actually one thing that I commend during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, because we finally saw at some point, not at the beginning, where everybody was fending for themselves, but we saw compassion. We saw that across the world, people were dealing with the same issue. And I do feel that more compassion was expressed. But now that it's done, I do feel, maybe I'm wrong, hopefully I'm wrong, but I do feel that we are unfortunately back into our old ways, especially Western society led by individualism, where the law of the strongest prevails. We end up being as harsh to others as the world with all of its layers has been with us, hardening our hearts after hurtful past experiences and viewing empathy as well as compassion as weaknesses, eventually reserving such human acts for a few, usually our close-knit circle at best. Everyone has their own way of dealing with their pain. Nonetheless, oftentimes we tend to opt for hitting where it hurts when we are hurt by another person or just hurt for whatever reason. Or maybe we even holding onto old feelings of hurt. As a way to cope with our pain, we share or deflect our pain on someone else. We point fingers and blame others because it's too much to bear alone, when we can, in fact, choose compassion and healing instead of hatred and reacting from our wounded self, the one that usually has its foundation formed through childhood experiences. Compassion has such a tremendous impact on oneself and the collective at large. I do believe that if we were to demonstrate more compassion for ourselves and ultimately to one another, the world would not only be such a better and happier place, but full of healing, peace, and acceptance. Maybe we cannot change everyone, the rules of our society, but we can change ourselves. We can improve and heal ourselves. So this is what I want to talk about today: how self-acceptance and embodying our truest self develop compassion inside of us to bring more happiness into our personal lives and into the collective well-being and happiness as well. To help me answer to this question, I invited Chris Cirak, the author of the book Be You, The Journey of Self-Realization, meditation teacher, and mindfulness retreat leader. Chris teaches living a life of joy and self-realization through empathy, presence, mindfulness, and essentially going back to basic human values. I'm excited for that talk and see how we can cultivate and forge more compassion for self and for others. Listen up to this gem. If you want to let go of past pain, transcend your traumas, expand your consciousness, and reclaim your power to finally be the main character of your own conscious reality, as well as learning about conscious living, you're at the right place. Welcome to Conscious Matters. It's a safe space where we chat about conscious matters, focus on self-empowerment, awareness, holistic wellness, and sustainability. Join me, Melissa DeBerry, for inspiring conversations with myself and some of the most beautiful souls out there. We expand on our experiences and share what we've learned along our healing journey to live in peace, harmony, and mindfulness on a daily basis. Oh, and share with loved ones, and don't forget to take 5 little seconds to review this podcast by just leaving a few stars and kind words. That would really help with the algorithm, so we can spread the message to help more people live consciously. Get your mind, body, and soul ready for a ride in consciousness. Namaste, listeners. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Melissa.
Welcome to Conscious Matters. Thank you for joining.
Of course. Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited.
That's good. So let's dive in right away into self compassion and self acceptance. I personally believe that everything stems from how we perceive, act, and talk to ourselves. We radiate our inner world onto our outer world with, of course, different components that are not necessarily in our control. But I noticed that every time that we are blocked or stuck is because of our own conditioning that we got during our upbringing, which created tons of limiting beliefs about ourselves. I don't know if you agree with that, but I do believe that is leading us to be too harsh on ourselves, even self hatred in some cases, being impatient with ourselves, comparing ourselves, and beating ourselves down every time that we're not supposed to be where we are right now at this moment in life. And to me, this is that harshness towards ourselves and not releasing the layers of harmful conditioning upon us that creates this huge, huge lack of compassion for self and ultimately others. So, with that in mind, what is self compassion and why do we need it first?
Yes, that's a great setup right there. And absolutely, it's the degree to which we can love ourselves is the degree to which we can love others. How we listen to ourselves is how we can listen to others. How well we know ourselves is how well we can hold space for others. So, yeah, it all starts with the self. It's not selfish at all. It's not being self absorbed. It's putting in the work to really discover your true self beyond the layers of conditioning, as you mentioned, and really getting to the core of who you really are and being able to stand in your own truth and not in the truth of others. Even if they're well meaning, we've been kind of indoctrinated and with a lot of outside voices as we grow up. And then we kind of have a difficult time telling the difference between those voices and our own true voice. So it's all about getting to a place where you're compassionate and loving and caring with yourself and having a practice of self-care and self-love. And that then is a reflection onto our capacity to deal with the world around us. So yes, that's absolutely it. And what goes into it? Well, primarily it's coming out of those conditioned voices that are in our head and really learning to allow that inner voice to become amplified. Everyone has kind of that inner voice where you kind of know what you're supposed to be doing. And very often we hear it and we just don't do it.
Yeah.
So it's all about, learning to listen a little better to our inner wisdom and then letting that guide us.
And how do we listen to our inner wisdom?
Mm. Well, the main thing that gets in the way is our reactivity. So, our reactivity is when we experience a feeling, good or bad doesn't even matter. It's a positive or a negative feeling. And then we either push it away because it's unpleasant, uncomfortable, and that's a reaction to the feeling, or we cling to a pleasant one, a positive feeling. And that's an interruption of the natural ebb and flow of feelings. All feelings come and go, they arise and pass on their own unless we, of course, interrupt them, interrupt the rising and passing. And that is our reactivity, is reacting to how we feel. And every single reaction is ultimately what you described. It's a self-judgment, it's self-criticism, it's self-loathing, but also clinging to the feelings of, ooh, I want more of this. And then creates a hiccup and you become out of sync with life because now you're longing for something that has already passed. It's no longer here. And instead of getting ready to experience the next new, beautiful, magical, mysterious moment that comes along, we kind of linger on the last one and try to recreate that. So that takes us out of sync of life as well. And all this reactivity keeps us lodged in our heads. That's what drowns out our inner voice, our inner wisdom.
Great summary or how to listen to our inner voice. But generally, we see compassion, just like empathy, as a weakness. If I'm too nice, too kind, people will walk all over me and I need to stand up for myself. How can we reclaim compassion as a self empowering and powerful cooperation tool to make us stronger rather than seeing it as a weakness and something that we
Mm.
should avoid?
Yeah. I think the underlying principle there is to understand that the quality of our thoughts is is basically self-care. It's how well we treat ourselves or how not well we treat ourselves. So if we have hateful thoughts or vengeful thoughts or blaming thoughts or even lighter, even just anything that's negative, we're first and foremost harming ourselves. This is a negative charge that we take on and that we put into our system. And so to really truly understand that, and once we embrace that, then it's all about loving others and being empathic and holding space, because we're also at the same time nurturing our own frequency. And the more we practice that, the more that becomes a must. You simply cannot have ill thoughts of others, and especially of yourself, because you know it's hurting you. So then you just become a loving, beautiful person that wants the best for everyone and oneself. Of course, there are others around us that will maybe try to take advantage of that or talk us down and these things. But, when you stand in your truth and you really recognize how important it is to keep your thoughts and your feelings positive and clear and in alignment, then nothing can shake that. It does take a little bit to practice that, though.
Yeah, thank you for specifying that, because it's a process. It doesn't come like that right away, especially as you said, because of the indoctrination or the conditioning, whatever we want to call it. It stems from our childhood. We've been living with that for so many years, if not decades. So to me, I think it's about releasing past experiences or not feeding the false narrative that forge individualism and, as you said, self-hatred or self-judgment. So doing the inner work to heal our inner child wounds that triggers behavior that are in contradiction with displaying and embodying compassion. How do we get there? How can we address our wounds and respond to them with tenderness?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And like you said, we've maybe spent decades living in this reactivity and this judgment of self and others. And so there's a physiological wiring that has set itself in our brain, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, and that gets triggered. And so it keeps getting reinflamed every time we keep reacting. And so to come out of that, the good news is, and I've seen this happen hundreds of times at my BU retreats where we practice by focusing on our breath and our sensations and other practices, mindfulness practices, to come out of that reactivity. And then that helps us stay in a kind of a calm-minded place, allows us to take clear action, as I call it, which is just making better decisions, not out of reactivity, but from seeing things clearly, experiencing our feelings clearly, allowing our feelings to express themselves fully without reacting to them. The good news is, just after dedicating some time to establishing a mindfulness practice, these reactive loops already start to fade. And you can start to come out of this monkey mind that is always jumping around, that has us lost in thought. 60, 70, some people say over 80% of the day we spend lost in thought, which is really time that we're not here, that we're not alive. So just coming out of that 5%, 10% at first already has a huge positive impact on the quality of our life and our awareness of what's happening around us and for us ultimately, because all these things that trigger us and the challenges are ultimately happening for us.
But what about the people who don't necessarily have access to retreats or mentors or people who already have been doing that journey? How can they, by themselves, try to address these wounds?
Yeah. Well, there's this thing called the internet. and
My favorite
and
source.
so yes, it is a great resource. You can find
Yeah.
all kinds of teachings on, oh my gosh, on YouTube. And I do a free meditation once a week. And there's a lot of practitioners that our primary motivation is to be of service. And we still have to make a living, but to be of service is first and foremost. And so you'll always be able to ask some questions and get a free copy of my book or this or that. And just to, if you show interest, people want to help that are in this occupation of being of help. So just reaching out, not being shy. There's so many methods and
So many. Yes.
yeah, I mean, it's endless. And I've gone through so many myself, and there's always somebody who is happy to, sit down and explain, or you'll be surprised how many people actually around us understand and maybe, even meditate, and that you just don't even know it because they haven't talked about it. And maybe there's in some segments of the world, there's still a taboo around that, but just to start somewhere and keep seeking. And I think the path kind of unfolds for you. It'll pull you in.
I love that you use the word seeking because I think is how everything starts. In order to cultivate self-awareness, you have to be willing and motivated to seek the truth and most importantly, your truth.
Yeah. So that's actually a really important note because for a lot of people, the seeking element only comes in once they kind of hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And because
We
that's
wait
what
too late.
happens.
Yes.
Yeah, we wait and we don't take the time and then this reactivity builds up, our relationships get worse, or we get far down a path that we really isn't authentic to us and so forth. And so it gets harder and harder. And the good news is, and as is the case with me, you don't have to hit rock bottom to start living a more purposeful, mindful life. I just started feeling like there was more to life than kind of is presented by society, and I started seeking, and there was a lot of resources that I discovered that were right in front of me, and I just didn't see them because I wasn't open to seeing them.
For you, you didn't hit rock bottom before seeking information or how to heal yourself or how to improve your life.
Oh yeah, not at all. If anything, it was because I did all the things that society says you do to
Hmm.
be happy, and then I realized, I achieved some of those things, and it makes you happy temporarily. The achievements of the world do bring happiness and joy for a moment, and then life
Fleeting happiness.
continues. Yeah, it's fleeting happiness. So I felt like, well, there has to be more than this always living for outcomes. And then you're comparing, what's happening in the meantime to what you think should be happening because you have some outcome in mind. And then you're always kind of out of sync and in resistance, always looking for, someone upsetting my plan.
Yeah,
and
or trying to reach the next thing too.
Exactly. The next. So I think we all kind of, I think pop culture calls it midlife crisis. Yeah, we all kind of reach a point where like we feel like we've tried that route of seeking our permanent happiness on the outside. And then we start to, well, where haven't we not yet looked? And that's the inside. And so we turn within.
And the more we are self aware and fully embrace all facets of ourselves, the good, the bad, and ugly, through that seeking of the truth and our truth, in other words, accepting and embracing both our light and dark attributes and strip ourselves from the veil of unconsciousness, the more we come back to basics, to a natural state of pure unconditional love, of inner peace and deep well-being. And most of the time, when we, just like we said at the beginning, it starts with ourselves. So when we have all of that, or we reach that natural state within ourselves, it radiates onto the world around us and hopefully makes us leave hopefully a greater positive impact by just being our most authentic self. Which leads me to talking about compassion for the collective. How does self-compassion impacts having compassion for the collective?
So our inner truth is it's a very different experience than this mental truth that we're used to living in. The mental truth is based on comparison, it's constant validation. It needs to be reinforced. You become defensive very easily. There's a lot of friction in that. And our inner truth is really, it doesn't clash with the truth of others. In fact, it wants everyone to discover their own truth because it's so rock solid. You just know this is who I am, and so that's a very different experience. And when you bring that to the world, there's an energy or a charisma around that, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
where people feel included because it's an inclusive energy, and they feel like you're not judging them. You're open to just life being life, and so that's a really positive, high vibe that people want to be around. So you'll notice people, hiring you more often or inviting you more often, wanting to spend time with you more often because you don't judge them. You don't filter everything they say through your own set of beliefs. I call it a truth structure. And that is, a form of judgment. People can tell if you're purely listening, if you're there for them and to hold space for their experience, or if there's a little bit something going on where you're thinking, for yourself, whether you judge them a little bit or not, or whether you're reflecting on yourself and what you believe believe, and so forth. So keeping it a really pure kind of experience of compassion, it does wonders.
I love that. I absolutely loved what you explained, but I want to extend it even further and think about people who are actually very far from us, people who are very different from us, because most of the time we think, which to me is a complete illusion, that our difference is what separates us. So how can we release that illusion and finding that compassion for people who are nothing like us? Because that is the
Yeah.
hardest thing, because it's easy, I would say easier, not easy, but easier to be nicer and finding this kindness and care for someone who has been through the same thing as we've been through, or kind of mirror the same attributes or the same kind of personality. But what about the person who's across the world, who has a different culture, different religion, different way of thinking, who's very, very different and very, very far?
Yeah. So judgment is actually what creates separation. Whenever you judge anything, and it goes into the microcosm of labeling a tree, for example. It's no longer experiencing its presence. It's actually saying, you're a tree. That means I'm over here, and you, the tree, is over there. And so that creates a sense of a little hit of separateness. And when we judge other people, it's the same thing. It creates separateness. And we go around all day long with this mind that loves to judge and compare and put labels on things and define things. And so we're creating a constant flow of separateness, which makes us feel, separate and distant and isolated. And from distance only, you can hate people. You can think ill for them. The other end of this is when you come out of the judgmental mind and you stand in your own body and your inner truth. And that is an inclusive energy. It brings you in closer. You can hold space for people and listen to them and see them and experience them again without judging them, without running anything they do through your own filter of whether this is right or wrong or good or bad or this or that. You allow them to be exactly the way they are. Even I would say you celebrate them exactly the way they are, because it's just an expression of life. And you yourself no longer feel separate when you no longer judge yourself or the world around you. And so really then that's when you're marching towards oneness.
So finding that inner truth, because we've been talking about inner truth a lot. How do we get there? What is inner truth?
So what I teach with the people I work in at my retreats, it's really to give everyone the space and the tools to discover their own inner truth. Everyone has their own blueprint, their own GPS. I can't tell, nobody from the outside can tell you what your truth is, but they can show you some of the tools. And my favorite approach is to work with sensations. And that is ultimately, I found for myself as well, has been the most long lasting and permanent change that one can bring to oneself to come out of reactivity. And that's really just looking where your feelings show up in your body and learning to observe the feelings without reacting to them, and take some practice, a daily mindfulness practice of morning and the evening. But within very little time, you can see incredible results. And from there, it just takes on a life of its own.
That's good. That was actually one of my questions. What are the practical tools you could recommend to do so? So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And would you recommend, because I know you're a meditation teacher, but would you recommend other things other than meditation, other mindfulness tools?
Yeah. So meditation really is a state of being. It's not a separate activity and then that you may do in the morning for half an hour or hour, and then you go live the rest of your day. It's a state of being that you bring into your daily activities. And yeah, you
What do you
need a
mean by
little bit.
that?
So really being present with the simplicity of life is in the present moment. So even when you're just doing the dishes or you're folding the clothes, you can experience the height of existence, even in doing these simple tasks. It doesn't have to be this incredible big achievement that you're after or anything like that. So it's noticing the detail, even in a partner, if you've been in a relationship for a long time and can feel that the beginning magic isn't there so much anymore, and that you're starting to take each other for granted, or other family members that you grew up with. That tends to happen, and that's only because we've take mental snapshots of the people around us, and then we start to live by these kind of static pictures. So the way to break that monotony and that taking for grantedness is to notice detail. It's very simple. So noticing something that you haven't looked at recently in your partner will break the static picture, and you can feel them coming alive again. And suddenly they're this person, and their aliveness becomes evident, and the changing nature of life, because that's really the labeling of the mind, is trying to hold things still, and that's not the nature of life, right? So noticing detail in your favorite artwork that you bought and were so excited about, and now suddenly you just walk past it and don't even see it anymore. These are all the things, or a new car, whatever it may be. These are all the things where if you notice detail, if you look closer, then you break up the dullness of it, and then suddenly it comes to life again. And you can do that with anything in life, in your job and your passion. If you feel like you've hit a creative block or something, it's ultimately it's simplifying the situation. When we get up into our heads, things get really complicated. We pull in the past and the future, and go down rabbit holes, and our monkey mind jumps around from branch to branch, unrelated thought to unrelated thought.
Too many branches. Yes.
Yes, way too many branches. So it's all about simplifying. And, I can go on and on, because once you simplify, it really brings forth gratitude for the amazingness of life. There's just so much to be grateful for.
Yes, absolutely. So you would say active meditation, active with air quotes, of course, presence and gratitude.
Yes, those are definitely key staples of a mindfulness practice.
And as mentioned before, the societal conditioning we pretty much all received, especially with globalization, which makes society rules very similar all around the world, has greatly hindered our happiness. And we were talking about happiness before. From your own experience and all of the work you've been doing around mindfulness and keep on doing with your practice, how could we reimagine happiness, but in a way that helps us not experience fleeting happiness or fleeting happiness moments, but happiness for the long term, allowing us to be fully aligned with our true authentic self at our core, despite the ebbs and flows of life.
Yeah.
And just a quick note that knowing that I don't know if there's such thing as true happiness, knowing that at the end of the day, we all have our own personal definition regarding our unique self.
Yeah. Well, I do believe there's a thing as true happiness, and that's ultimately to be free. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Gives us hope.
Yes. And it's to be free of judgment. It's to be free of self-limiting beliefs. It's to be free of, judgment of oneself, and to be free of the pressure of time, which really only comes about when we live on our heads and again, chasing outcomes and goals, and just to be free of the complication that comes up when we're out of sync with our true self, when we're out of sync with life happening all around us. And primarily because we live in our heads, we've been conditioned by society that is constantly looking to elicit a reaction from us, right or wrong, true or false, for me, against me. I mean, we're constantly in this reactive state. And so we have to make a little effort to come out of that. And so this dovetails into the topic of, your true purpose of what we're here for. We talked about our inner blueprint earlier. And it's really when we come out of the noisy head and we connect with our body and we hear our inner voice, we can start making decisions, small decisions all day long. They all build up, and they build a positive momentum towards living in alignment with what's right for you. It doesn't have to be this big goal that we're working for. It's good to set a goal, but ultimately you have to allow life to work, its ways. And there's going to be twists and turns, and most of our path is actually spent off our path. So then we course correct.
That is so true.
And then we go the other way, right? And we
Yeah.
veer off on the other side, and then
So many detours. Yes. Absolutely.
Yes, yeah. But that ultimately, that bigger picture of who you're meant to be in this lifetime, it starts to open up and reveal itself, and then you can go for it. You can't want it that much. You have to allow it to unfold for you.
So would you say that happiness is a state of mind then, if we just need to flow with life and being in our true self or a true path?
Yeah, I mean, I would say happiness is a state of unmind, unmindedness,
Okay.
non-mind, right?
Not
Something like
our
that.
mind and flow instead.
Yeah. It's to use the mind for what it's designed for, which is to know things, to analyze, to plan. It's great for skill development, for management. It's this amazing thing. I mean, it keeps our whole body working.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to use it as, something to navigate life from a place of wisdom and what's right for you, it doesn't know what's right for you. It's a tool we use, but it doesn't know us. So we have to pull from somewhere else this wisdom, and that's our inner divinity.
That's funny because I did an episode about the mind versus the heart. Actually, it was not versus, but how they can work complementing each other. And the guest was a cardiologist, and she said that the mind is supposed to serve the heart because the heart is the one who knows ourselves, who knows our deepest desires, part of our blueprint. But at the same time, the mind is the one who kind of use the will of the car pretty much to be able to drive us to that goal or to that destination. So I like
Yes.
how it goes what you said.
Exactly. That was that cardiologist was a kindred spirit.
Was probably, yeah, I probably butchered her words, but essentially that was the message.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. Heart space, gut instinct, higher self, inner divinity, whatever you want to call it. I call it inner voice because there's just something there that tells us what's really in line with what we should be doing. And it's just learning to listen to that. And once you get a hang of it, the whole picture starts to become really clear how simple life is, how it wants us to heal first, and then it wants us to grow, it wants us to become the person we're meant to be. It doesn't want us to keep small and stay stuck in our little beliefs and in our little comfort zones and all that. It really wants us to blossom and flourish. So it'll send us triggers. It'll send us lessons that we need to learn. And if we don't learn them the first time, they will show up again and
And
again.
again, yeah.
And yeah, so it's really starting to embrace this design of life that is there to prompt us to look at the parts every time we feel triggered about something. It's pointing to something we need to work on. And it's pretty amazing how this could be in starting to recognize that the people that challenge us the most are our greatest teachers, and that the challenges that present themselves to us ultimately become our calling, because we become experts at overcoming those challenges. And then we can help others do the same.
100%. You talked about the inner voice. I call it inner voice or intuition. But to listen to it, you also mentioned feelings. You said that you like focusing on sensations because I see feelings and sensations as guidance, and how when we have icky feelings or we feel scared or not so well is also a message for us to maybe redirect ourselves or maybe take a beat or maybe think about another solution or another approach to the obstacle or to the problem in front of us. Can you maybe develop that if you have the same mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great question. There's this sense out there that mindfulness is about maybe pushing away or eliminating thoughts, or pushing away or eliminating feelings. And nothing could be farther from the truth. It's all about allowing those thoughts and feelings to express themselves fully. It took a long time for me to realize that what I thought was my feeling, say an event happened and it caused a certain emotion in me, I thought my experience was my feeling. And
Yeah.
it took me a long time to recognize that there was my feeling and then there was my reaction to the feeling. And my reaction to the feeling was much bigger, 90% of it. And that reaction to the feeling is what kept the feeling stuck. And then you linger, and the next reaction piles another layer of stuck feelings on top of it. And so you get all jumbled up very quickly. So learning to really feel your feelings fully, which is to give them space to arise and pass fully. And exactly what you say is to derive the message that they're bringing us, but not lingering on it unnecessarily, not being in resistance to the feeling and blaming and stewing in that reactive energy and, telling others later in the day, oh, this is what happened, or this is what that person said, or, sometimes days and weeks, and we linger on stuff for years. So it's really to observe your thoughts and allow them to be, but not identify with them, accept the ones that bring you inspiration and insight, but let the other ones go. And there's no reason to identify with all of them and take them on. So meditation is about creating a gap between your true essence, yourself, and your thoughts, meaning you're not your thoughts. thoughts. It's learning to develop the awareness between yourself and your thought. And then with your sensations, the same thing is learning to feel your feelings fully, allow them to arise and pass, but take the knowledge that they bring. And then you're much more efficient because you're not stewing in the reactive energy anymore. You're always looking at it from a problem solving place, from a forward looking place, from a what lesson is life trying to teach me here? What's the message my feelings are bringing me? So you're much more proactive and positive about the whole experience. You start to participate in kind of the unfolding of your hero's journey. So that's what really mindfulness and all these practices are about, to decrease the time that we spend just judging a feeling and lingering on the feeling and regurgitating or amplifying it unnecessarily well beyond the actual occurrence of it, and to just take the message and the wisdom and the insight that these thoughts and feelings bring and act on them clearly.
Yeah, taking the little clues and also understand that you, of course, not your thought, but you also not your feelings, and trying to really differentiate. I do believe that when you do that, it's much harder to feel completely desensitized from the pain of others and to take things personally, making assumptions and not feeling touched by what others are feeling, or our loved ones or people around us, but also, as I said before, people far from us. What brings me joy and hope, I would say, is talking and seeing people like you create safe spaces to actually go back to the basics of humanity and reflecting on ourselves without the fluff, without the conditioning, without the veils and illusions that has been put upon us. So can you please talk a little bit more about your business, your space, and what is its purpose?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a
It's
long
really to
way to have this question, but essentially that's what I
that's
wanted to
perfect. Everything is perfect as it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really, I've taken, and this was the goal with my book and the retreats and the coaching that I do, and is essentially take the spiritual out of the spiritual.
What
What
do you
I mean
mean?
by that, yeah, is to, early on in my journey, I was as I was seeking and I was reading certain books or watching clips and so forth, and I felt like the language was getting in the way of the wisdom. A lot
Mm,
of it was woo woo. I just didn't understand
yeah.
it at the time. And right. And so I sought out to write a book that just takes out all of that quote unquote woo woo language. Now I love it. Judgment there.
Simplifying it.
But simplifying it really,
Yeah.
and just making it accessible. And that was my career before this. It was for over 25 years. I was a media consultant, corporate consultant. I taught in higher education and for over 10 years. And so just really understanding how people learn the best. And that is small chunks, easy, accessible language. And so that's really the core of my work. I try really hard to not use anything that can trigger anyone, because it's a shame that just because we grew up a certain way, and so now we're kind of allergic to hearing certain
Certain
words,
words.
right?
Yes.
That we then
Yeah.
miss out on just
Yeah.
this beautiful universal wisdom that's there for
Mm.
all of us, this, oneness and love and compassion. So that's really at the heart of and core of my mission.
I love that you said that, because I received an email, I think that was two days ago, or of someone asking me if I was doing one-on-one coaching for mindfulness and dealing with self-sabotage. But that person was very afraid of mindfulness being, since it's seen as spiritual, was against their religious practice. So that was very interesting to see how not making the language accessible and too spiritual, too woo-woo actually deters some people from going into mindfulness practices in order to know themselves better, to love themselves better, and to care of themselves better. That was interesting. So I love that you actually making it much more accessible for people to understand that it's not like a new religion. It's more of a mindset and lifestyle and a way and a tool to have this self-acceptance, self-compassion, self-care, self-love, self-empowerment by digging inside of ourselves and by finding our true self.
Exactly. And you know what? It's never too late. My mom started meditating with me at 78.
Amazing.
And today we, almost every day we do an online sit together. And she too was afraid for a long time of that it would clash with her religious beliefs. And then she just saw the change in me and became more and more interested and realized there's no clash there and whatsoever. It's really just self-care. And
Absolutely. Yes.
you wouldn't believe how many guys are turned off by the word yoga. So,
Really? Interesting.
yeah, Yeah. So I call it conscious movement. So there's
Mm.
ways around it.
That's how you understand that every single word has so much tremendous value and so much weight. And it's very important to be conscientious about the way that we use our words.
Yes. Awareness everywhere. Awareness. Yeah.
Do you have simple daily habits you do to be or act more consciously in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I love sharing those too because they're so simple. The first thing I do every morning, and this will take you a minute, it's a technique pioneered by Dr. Andrew Weil. It's called 478 breathing, and it's 4 seconds in breath through the nose, hold there for 7 count, and then exhale for 8. And you just do that 3 times, and it activates your parasympathetic nervous system. You become more relaxed instantly. I mean, those of listeners who are into science, they can look all of this up, but your own practice, just give it a try. You'll feel it right away. So that's how I start my day. I try to every time I do an important call or go into a meeting, I just make sure to spend a minute before focusing on my breath, which is essentially connecting with your body, coming out of the head that is, all anxious and tries to control and steer everything, and just connecting with the body. And it's had incredible positive effects on everything, every aspect of my life.
4 seconds inhalation, 7 second holding, and 8 second exhalation.
Exhalation through the mouth. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a 478. There's many other variations, like we said before. Just try them out, see what works for you. And then my only piece of advice is to stick with that. Most techniques take a little bit of a while to really bear fruit. So don't toss something just because you've done it for a week or two and think it doesn't work. Give it a little bit more of a fair trial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know about your services you offer and where can we find you online?
Oh, absolutely. So you can always find me at my website, Cirak.com. That's Cirak.com. Everywhere on social media at Chris Cirak. And then my book is on Amazon and all the main bookstores, also on Audible as a self-narrated audiobook. Yeah, just type my name into a search engine, you'll find me.
Thank you, Chris. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, Melissa. It's been such an honor being here. Thank you. I loved all your questions and your beautiful energy. I hope people can see your smile.
Thank you. And you have a beautiful smile too. Chris arrived here with so much high energy, and I think you got communicated through the talk. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Blessings.
You too. Thank you to have taken the time to listen to me talking about conscious living. Conscious Matters is a self-produced podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, leave a review, and/or donate. Your support will help to keep on raising the collective consciousness together. Take care and talk to you soon.